Welcome to the Product Podcast, where we dive deep into the real world challenges and victories of product managers, startup founders, and product teams. I'm your host, Lee Jean, and in each episode, we have authentic conversations that uncover the hidden stories shaping modern product management. In today's episode, we're interviewing Suraj Bhandari, who is a product manager for PayPay, for an insightful discussion about his journey as a product manager in Japan. I really hope you enjoy the episode. All right, Suraj, thank you for joining me on the Product Podcast. I'm so happy to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Lee.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I'm
on this,
excited. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. On this podcast, what we do is we discuss, industry challenges, stuff that, are wins in the product management industry, things that, you wish were more prevalent, things like that, right? So I guess what I wanted to start out with is you tell me a little bit about how you got into product management and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a very interesting story. I never knew what product management was even before like doing the product management job. So I came to Japan in 2019, and I came here with the intention of just studying Japanese and then getting a job as a developer, right? But then after some thoughts, I realized that hey, I'm not a good programmer, or I'm not interested in development. So what else can I do? And I was trying to figure out what my passion was, and I knew that I was quite interested in sports. And so after my language school, I joined a master's program which majored in sports management. And after the program, I was trying to figure out, hey, listen, what is something that I could use computers, programming, and sports, like sports technology kind of a job. And that's when coincidentally I found a part-time job during my master's program, which was building a baseball scoring application. And I joined as a part-timer, but eventually they gave me so much responsibility that I was acting as a product manager, though I was not getting paid as a product manager. That's very, very interesting. And that's when I learned what product manager was, and what are the responsibilities of product manager, and what are the other things, what are the activities they do, and everything. And I spent 2 years in that role. I gained a lot of experience. I'm really thankful for the founders and the CEOs for giving me the opportunity to take that much responsibility, though I was not experienced. And yeah, that experience like was really interesting. I really liked it because it was really fast paced, a lot of things going around. I was communicating with a lot of different stakeholders, and like I was making a lot of quick decisions, which I think was really like it had like a dopamine effect on my brain, right? I was having like really so much fun doing that thing. So I was like I continued, and after that I realized, hey, I mean, the project was not that successful because I think the product itself was not marketed well, was not tested well with the right audiences, right target audience. So I thought, hey, if the product is not moving forward, maybe I should move on to a different job where the product is better. And that's when I quit my previous job, and I was looking for a product manager job in Japan. And fortunately, I found a product management role at PayPay, which is pretty interesting. Yeah, that's how I got into product management.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like you kind of evolved into the role at that first startup that you were in. It sounded like you were saying, like you didn't really know what a product manager was, but you were kind of doing the in between, right, of both the business and the tech side. So at what point did you realize, oh, I think I'm, liking what I'm doing right now? What point
Right.
was that?
Um, it was during that specific project that I was working on. But if I have to pinpoint one specific situation or a point in time, then I would say it was during the demo phase when the product got developed, and I had to go to the client's place and show them what the product does. And when I was demoing the product and I was getting that responses from the client, that was a really great feeling because all the hard work that you've put in, right? All the work that you've put into building the product, you finally see the result. That's when you see the result. If the client are happy, that means you've had like all your hard work has repaid back, right? So yeah, that was the time I realized, hey, this thing is really nice. I love
Mm,
building products. I love making clients happy. I love making the users happy. So that's
yeah.
what made me like fall in love with product management.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah. And so you
Yeah,
said you got a job working at PayPay. Can you tell me a little bit about the transition from working from a startup to a company that's more established like PayPay?
great. Yeah, I mean, this is like PayPay is an interesting place to work at, right? Like everyone does, like everyone knows PayPay. I mean everyone in Japan knows what PayPay is. It's just like a payment application, and though it's an established company, it still works like a startup, right? A lot of things are not does not have a process. So you would be like, hey, a company like PayPay does not have a simple process like project management tool, or they use Excel to manage different projects, right? And that was pretty interesting. However, because it works like a startup, I still have that passion. Like everyone has that passion to get things done as quickly as possible. There's not a lot of like what do you call company politics going on, right? Because everyone's in a startup mindset, making sure, hey, let's make sure the users are happy. Let's deliver the highest quality of features to the end users, and let's make sure we provide the highest value to the end users, right? So everyone has that mindset, and everyone's working together to deliver that outcome, right? So that's pretty interesting. So that continues, that specific what you call environment that I was used to continues in Pepe as well. One thing that's different from my previous startup, like the previous startup that I used to work for, is Pepe is huge, very huge. um, I would say there are around 3,000 employees, right? And on the product side, which builds the application, we are around 1,000 employees, and on the business side, we have 2,000 employees. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's so huge. And when I first joined PayPay, I was so confused as to who I was supposed to talk with, right?
Mm,
If I had a new project, I was like, who am I supposed to talk with? Who manages this project, right? It was confusing. It took me almost like a day or two just to figure out who am I supposed to talk with.
mm,
That was like one of the biggest changes or challenges that I had found in PayPay when I had first joined.
mm.
That's
Yeah.
pretty, yeah. It's big, it has a lot of teams, but still works like a startup.
Wow, that seems like a very dynamic environment then. You know, you having thousands of employees, but still having that startup mindset is very interesting. And it could be a very thrilling place to work at.
It
So,
is, yeah.
yeah. So, how do you, I guess, navigate that type of environment as, you know, a brand new PM, right? You just came off from a startup role, right? You're going
Mm.
into a corporate environment that still functions like a startup, but you know, has a lot more processes, a lot more people, right? What were the first couple of months like for you getting up to speed?
Right. I think because there's there's not so many processes in place
Mm,
in PayPay, a lot of things are quite challenging to figure out. When I first joined, I didn't know what technologies PayPay used, right? What kind of like the fundamental architecture of the product was, or how to navigate through different teams,
hmm
or who am I supposed to like talk with regarding certain aspects of the product, right? Or how could I get like how can I talk to the users directly? I didn't know that, right? And also the business team, because it was 2000 members, I think there were around like 80 to 90 different teams,
Wow.
right? So I didn't know which team on the business side to talk to, right? And also we had a lot of different types of teams that is not available in the startup, right? Because fintech works in a different way. You have risk, you have legal, you have what do you call operations,
Mm,
you have system headquarters, right? There's different types of teams. So that was quite challenging. So if when I first joined, if there was a way for me to ask someone every day, 24 hours, 24/7, like every hour, every time about where to who to communicate with, how to communicate with them. Uh, if there was such a kind of tool, I think it'll make my life easier when I first joined, like when I first joined a company like PayPay. So that was
interesting.
challenging. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was not able to navigate well.
Yeah. It sounds like it. And, how long have you been there since joining?
It's been a year this Jan.
Oh, exciting. Exciting.
Yeah, yeah,
Exciting.
yeah.
And do you prefer the more, I guess, smaller startup situation, or do you prefer a more established company?
Before moving to Japan, I have worked in Dell, the Dell computers, Dell
Okay.
Technologies, right, for
Hmm.
3 years, um, which is quite an established organization, right? I mean, they've been for ages and kind of liked it, but I prefer a startup and a mid-sized environment, a growth stage environment, where because if you're in startup, all your focus is trying to figure out the biggest pain point, biggest
Hmm.
problem to solve,
Hmm.
which can take a lot of time.
Yeah.
But in a growth stage company like PayPay, I mean, it's already grown to a huge market share, but still, it's still growing and it's trying to provide different services, different products to different audiences. It's still like a growth stage company. And the fun thing about such kind of an organization is that you already have a product market fit, right?
Mm,
You already know what your users want.
right.
And the only thing that you have to do is to grow your audience. And that's a really
Mm,
fun thing to do, right? You just
hmm.
have to put in more effort to do marketing, reach the audience,
Yep.
to convey your values to the users, and get the feedbacks, iterate on the product, build the features, and release and get feedback. I love that process.
Mm.
And yeah, I would love to work in a growth stage company.
It sounds like a very interesting, fun, like fast-paced environment. So
Yes,
you said that you love this type of environment, right? Where it's like
right.
you're constantly, iterating, getting feedback from customers, right? What tips do you have for PMs that are also in maybe a similar type of company, to manage this process well?
A similar kind of a company, you mean like a growth stage company?
Growth stage company, yeah.
Right. I think the only thing that you have to prioritize is make sure you listen to your users. That's the number one thing. E- Even if you have like a higher priority business goal, even if like higher management says something to do, you first need to listen to your users, right? Because user needs. If you don't uh, solve the user's needs or user's problems, your product will never go anywhere.
Mm,
So
hmm.
that would be my number one advice. Listen to them, talk to them, keep talking to them. Even if you know that you've already spoken to them 100 times, just keep talking to them because
Hmm.
you will never know what you will find. So that would be my biggest advice
Mm.
to
Uh,
such.
I'm sure that, a lot of product managers, startup
Mm,
founders, other people that are in this type of position potentially would definitely agree with you.
mm,
However, there are a lot of situations where maybe the
mm,
upper management or other stakeholders have a certain idea in terms of what the product should look like, right? This is what a
mm.
lot of startup founders get in trouble with. They build solutions that they have a right idea for, and they don't
That's
listen
true.
to their customers enough, right?
That's
So,
true.
how would you handle a situation where you've listened, you've gotten all the feedback from your customers, right? But then
Hmm.
upper management and maybe other stakeholders are saying that you should go a different direction.
Right. Now it's simple as just showing the upper management what are the feedbacks that you've received, right? I'm sure the upper management are open to listening to their customers, right?
Mm,
So if you give them the information or the feedbacks that you've received, if you show it to them in a way, in a manner that's easy for them to understand, then I'm sure they would change their mind to focus on the biggest needs of the users, right? But let's say the management still wants to focus on a different feature or a different kind of a product. It's still good, because what you could do is maybe you could take 30% of your resources. You could talk to your management, tell them, hey, listen, we can have 30% of our resources focusing on the idea you have, and we can set up a deadline maybe for 2 months and see how it goes. If we receive a really good feedback, a good traction, then let's increase our resources to focus on that specific product and grow that product, right? So yeah, if you try to have that balance of focusing on the user needs, like maybe like 60-70% of your source resources on the user needs, and you could spend the rest 30% on what the management wants. You will have that balance.
interesting. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's definitely one way to approach it for sure.
Yes.
Speaking of management, obviously you're based here in Japan and PayPay is a Japanese company. Can you talk to me
Yeah,
a
that's
little
right.
bit about, I guess, the environment? Are you in a multinational environment, mostly Japanese environment? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. PayPay is quite what do you call, global company, but at the same time is kind of a Japanese company. So
Mm.
what I mean is like on the product side, we have people from I think 60 different countries,
Oh, wow.
right? So it's pretty global, right? You get to meet people from Egypt, from France, from I would say from Finland or from Thai and everything, right? But although also on the business side, where we have like 2,000 members, I would say 90% of them are Japanese, right? So you have that Japanese kind of a structure on the business side.
Mm.
It's global at the same time, kind of a Japanese kind of an
Interesting.
environment. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So, do you yourself speak Japanese?
I do. I do. I did study Japanese for a year and a half. When I first came to Japan, I had joined Japanese
Oh,
language school.
excellent. Nice.
Yeah, yeah. So I do speak a bit of Japanese.
Nice. So, I guess how has your language skills helped you in your role at the moment?
It has helped a lot. Recently I've realized, so in PayPay, we have an interpreter, right? We have like few interpreters who join the Zoom call and translate the information to the other parties, right? If it's a business, if it's a Japanese guy, he would speak in Japanese, translate it in English, and then we would hear it in English, and the other way around as well, right? It's good that if you don't speak any Japanese at all, or if you don't speak any English at all, but because I speak some level of Japanese, I've realized it's better for me to talk to the other person in Japanese rather than using an interpreter. Because using an interpreter, I lose a lot of information.
Mm.
Um, the other day, I tried to do an experiment to see how much of an information I would lose. And this is just based on my experiment that I had done a couple of times, is using an interpreter, I lost around like 50% of the information what the other
Wow.
person was saying. Yeah, yeah. And when I stopped using the interpreter and spoke directly in Japanese, I was able to understand 70 to 80% of what the other person was saying.
Wow. It's a
So
big
yeah,
difference. Big
it's a
difference.
big difference. I think it's a big difference, and sometimes you lose critical, what do you call, nuances
Mm-hmm.
of what the other person is saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I realized.
So, is that mostly in verbal communication or also written communication? What is the
Uh,
differences there?
it's mostly in verbal communication,
Okay.
but also in written communication, we lose a lot of context.
Mm.
Um, we have this, we use Slack for message communication, right? For asynchronous communication. And we have this bot called as Kiara. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's like a plugin for Slack where if you send a message in Japanese, it would automatically translate in English.
Mm.
And if you send it in English, it would automatically translate in Japanese, right? but because it uses the basic translation algorithm, what happens is many of the time it loses the context of what the other person is saying.
I see.
And to give you an example, the other day, I think uh, like one of my colleague had sent a message saying PM Suraj is on holiday, and the bot translated as the Prime Minister Suraj is is on holiday. So
Okay,
PM could also mean product manager and also like Prime Minister. So it assumed Prime Minister and just gave the answer. So that's like
that's right.
very funny. Yeah.
That
So
is
yeah,
pretty funny. Prime Minister Suraj, you got an instant promotion. Exactly.
I
There you
did. I
go.
did.
There you go.
Even
Prime
that's
Minister
it.
PayPay there. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
No, so yeah, with regards to obviously written communication, Japanese language
Mm.
can be super difficult for foreigners to read and understand. And obviously, you took some language courses, but do you ever feel that even with your current knowledge of Japanese, you still lose some, of that meaning?
Yeah, I do. I do many times feel that I lose the information, I lose the context of what the other person is saying.
Mm,
Um, so going to Japanese language school is a great way to understand, learn the language, but also understand the Japanese culture, which
mm,
will help you what the other person is saying,
hmm.
right? But also at the same time, if you're working in an environment like PayPay or a fintech company or any domain specific company, what happens is there's a lot of Japanese words that are only domain specific, which
Right.
you would not learn in the language school, or you would not have that conversation on a day-to-day basis.
That's right.
So that I found that to be quite challenging.
Mm. Yeah, lots of jargon, right? Lots of technical terms that you might not know or have
Yes,
learned before. That's super important to
yes,
brush up on.
that's true.
Exactly.
That's
So,
true.
I
Yeah.
mean, how do you handle those challenges, right? Like, are there
Mm.
any tools that you use to combat those like language challenges other than the one you had mentioned before?
Right. I think what people what I've noticed is people sometimes feel ashamed of saying that they use translation tools or they use some kind of a tool to like understand the context of the messages. But in our team, we've openly encouraged everyone to use
Okay, good.
the yeah, encouraged to use the tools that we have because we are like what do you call a technology company. We should make sure like we use technology to make our life easier.
Right.
And so I personally use DeepL, Google
Mm.
Translate, and also I use like ChatGPT powered bot, which is
Okay.
built by PayPay,
Mm.
which is just PayPay is just ChatGPT API in the backend, and we just communicate with it and have the messages translated in Japanese. And out of these three, I feel the ChatGPT powered bot does the best in translation,
I see.
whereas then the second would be DeepL,
Mm.
and third would be Google Translate.
I see. Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
those are some really great tools, and hopefully our listeners will also consider using them if they find themselves in that type of environment as well.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. And also, I
Absolutely.
would just suggest them maybe if they have PowerPoint presentation or Excel sheet, which they want it to be translated in like the other language, the English or any targeted language, then I think Google Translate does the best
Ah,
because
I see.
yeah, it could translate images, Excel sheets, docs, and PowerPoints,
Awesome.
and PDFs as well.
That's right. Cool. Excellent. I want to shift gears and talk about a different topic at the moment, and
Yeah, sure.
that's, you know, on this podcast, we want to really uncover some of the biggest challenges that PMs have and they face because it's a really a challenging role, right? A lot
It
of
is. It is.
A lot of PMs that I've spoken to, they have mixed feelings about the position, but something keeps them there. Something makes them want to stay, even though they go through so much pain and craziness, right? So
Right.
what are the biggest challenges that you personally have faced throughout your career as a product manager?
Right. I think the biggest challenges for me in the startup environment was how can I manage the stakeholders, right? That was the biggest challenge. When I say stakeholders, how do I convince the clients to make a certain kind of a decision? Or how can I convince the management to make a certain kind of a decision? That's been a big challenge for me. So I'll have to make sure that I work on gathering the relevant data, relevant information, and making a really good presentation, and using that presentation to convey or convince the stakeholders, the management, and the clients. So that has been a challenge.
Interesting.
And yeah, and the other thing that has been a challenge for me is if there is a delay in the development, or if there is some unexpected thing that happened with the product, how can I confidently go ahead and convey that information to the management, right, the stakeholders, and make them understand that this is pretty common in the product development, right? And that has been a challenge as well.
Mm. So you
Because
said
I
the
think,
yeah.
go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, so sorry, I wanted to talk to you about that, the presentation aspect of it. So
Mm,
obviously not a lot of people, are good at presenting, right? Not a lot
that's
of
true.
people are good at public speaking or persuasive skills, right? So
That's right. Yeah.
what communication skills do you think are necessary to be a good PM?
I think product managers should be really good at conveying the values, the benefits, right? And also being sh crisp and short to the point. If they try to speak a lot, try to add lot of details, and that becomes quite challenging
Mm.
for the product, for the management or the client to understand what you're saying.
Hmm.
So making sure the client and the management find it easier to understand what you're saying, and it's also to the point and short.
Like what you're saying right there, that I just want to go deeper on that because what you're trying to convey sometimes is stuff that's
Mm,
maybe technical issues, right?
that's true.
Technical issues with the product that you need to
That's true.
then communicate to the business side, right? How big
That's
of a
true.
challenge is that sometimes?
Um, like I think a company like PayPay, I think the business team understands a bit of technology, right? So it's a bit easier to make them convince or make them understand of the problem. And also because it's a big company, they have a lot of resources and they have time to wait for like projects to be delayed. However, in a company like a startup, like the previous company that I used to work, we don't have much time. We
Mm,
don't have resources, right? So the business side, and also the business side is the clients who don't have
mm,
any information or idea about technology at all.
hmm.
So making them easier to understand about the technology or the issues that we have has been challenging. Because
Sure.
the only thing they wanna know is, hey, have you released a feature or
Right.
not? That's it.
Have
That's the
you
only thing
released?
they,
Have you
yeah,
released?
have you?
Does it how does it affect the bottom line? Like,
Yes,
give me a
yes.
timeline, right?
That's it. Then, yeah, they just need to know how does it impact their business. That's it. And
Exactly.
yeah, I don't think that it's their fault. It's just how I think the clients and the service industry dynamics work.
Right.
Because I think the reason why the clients give the project to service companies so that they can build the product,
Mm,
because they have the technology and the know-how to do that.
exactly. Exactly. Good. So we spoke a little bit about, obviously the challenges with communication and those type things. Are there any other major challenges that you can think of?
Um, I would say prioritizing the features and the
Oh,
business goals is something that every product manager has to learn pretty quickly in their career. If
yeah.
not,
Yeah, how did you learn how to prioritize properly? Yeah.
right. I think in the first project that I had handled in the previous company, so it was the baseball scoring application, right?
Hmm.
And there were two major components. One was the player management component, and the other one was the score input component, right?
Mm,
And out of these two, we realized that the score component is the most important one because it's a scoring application, right? However, when I spoke with the developers, engineers, and everything, they said, "Hey, it's easier to do this, the players management. Let's start with this,
Mm,
right?" And we had like 1.5 years of timeline, and we spent the first year just building this thing, the users component. And when it came time to develop the score component, I realized none of the developers know what baseball is,
ah,
what are the baseball rules are, and how to use how to make the baseball rules into programming logic, right? They didn't
right.
know that. So because of that, a lot of things did not go well
Mm,
in terms of how the app would work and how the scores are showed or inputted, and that's the reason I believe the product had failed. And
interesting.
so if we had done the other way around, if I go back and if I was doing the same project from scratch, I would ask every one of them, every one of the developers, engineers, designers, including me, to learn about baseball first,
Hmm.
to learn about the rules of the baseball first, and then focus on the scoring application, the scoring component,
Right.
and then have that released and tested,
Hmm.
and then build the user component,
Yeah.
users component, right? Yeah. If it was the other way around, I think it would have been a success.
It's about understanding what's going to be core for your, your user in the end, right? They're building a,
That's right.
baseball scoring application, right? If they
Right.
had
Yeah.
spoken more about their users and understood their users' needs more, I think it helps with prioritization, right? And
That's true. That's true.
that's good.
And
That's really
also,
mm,
I think because the management, the client were not experienced with how to build a product, right?
mm,
And also me being what do you call a junior product manager, I was also not aware or experienced about how to build a product,
mm.
and that's the reason we did not. I think we spoke to the users after 1 year into the development of the product,
Wow. Okay.
which is quite late. I think we should have done that within the first month or at least the first 2 weeks of the starting the product,
Sounds like a
developing the product.
backwards
Yeah,
process. Yes, exactly, exactly.
it was. Yeah,
Interesting. Well, it sounds like you also learned a lot from that process. You acknowledged that you were a junior at the time, and hopefully those type of learnings help you in your current position at the moment, right? A lot of
it
founders, a
has.
lot of PMs need to realize that, yeah, that you're going to make mistakes early on, but they're all learning experiences to get to where you're at today, which is good.
That's true. That's true.
Exactly.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
speaking
Yeah.
speaking of today, I kind of wanted to move from what you think product management is like today, and what do you see
Mm.
it becoming in the future? Obviously, with the development of technologies like AI and those type things, right? How do you see product management evolving over time?
Oh, that's a pretty great question. I think product management will be more fun in the future.
Oh, fun. All
Right.
right.
Yeah. Because what I see these days is that product managers spend a lot of time gathering data, the users' data, right? Or what do you call? They spend time managing the projects, uh, and also they spend time just to get the analytics data, right? And they don't spend time on building new services, new products,
Mm,
right? And so what I feel like using AI, it'll make easier for product managers to get the information as quickly as possible, right?
mm,
Analyze things as quickly as possible and use that output or the insights that they see or they get into building new services, new
mm.
products, right? Or targeting new user base. It'll become more fun to do a lot of new and interesting stuff in the future.
Interesting. Do you think
Yeah.
that the need for product managers will still be there later on, or do you think that an AI agent will replace all product managers in the future?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to lose my job, so I don't know. I would be a bit biased in saying we don't need the AI agent anymore. But then, um, we will definitely have some level of like product manager agent in the future, which will basically do the project management, like analyzing the data, analyzing the users' insights and everything. But I don't think these agents will try to build a new service, right?
Right.
These agents would try to grow the organization,
Okay.
because I think you need different sets of skills over there. You need to have like soft skills to go out there, go to the networking events,
I agree.
talk to the clients, talk to the users, right? Potential users and everything, right? And sometimes these agents do stuff for what they are told, like they do stuffs for which they have like programmed for, right? However, they don't do anything outside of those instructions, right?
Right.
Outside of those programming aspects. So where humans or human product managers shine is they have a lot of creative thinking,
Yep.
right? And they do a lot of things that are outside their uh, like product management position, right? So
That's right.
that's something that will still continue to happen in the future.
100%. And I totally agree. Like a lot, like you were saying before, we were talking about before about, like prioritizing, right? And understanding the users. Like a computer only understands what instructions you give it, right? Yeah, it can
Right. Yeah.
analyze a lot of data, but, you know, if you're doing a Zoom call like this and you're on the phone with a customer, right? You can see by their body language, okay, did they actually mean that, right? Are they
That's
hiding
true.
something
Yes.
or do they, how painful is it? An AI can't figure that out yet, right?
That's true.
But
That's true.
potentially, like you said, maybe there might be agent managers instead of product managers, right? Yeah, something like that.
That's true.
Exactly, exactly,
That's true. That's true. That's true. Yeah.
exactly.
I think
Yeah,
yeah, I think agents would not be able to understand the human nuances, small nuances. Like,
that's
right.
right.
I think that's gonna be challenging for those agents to
Yeah,
manage
exactly,
or understand.
exactly. Well, Suraj, this has been really great. I want to end this by, asking you if you have any advice for anyone thinking about becoming a product manager
Yeah.
or, somebody who's currently in the role and maybe, struggling a bit. What advice do you have for them?
So if you are in Japan, there's a couple of groups called like Japan Product Camp, or I think it was, I'm forgetting the other name. Maybe I'll send it later so you can have it in the description or somewhere. But
Hmm.
there's two interesting groups where you can go ahead and join and learn about product management. And also, my biggest advice is to join a startup. That's the best way to becoming a product manager as quickly as possible. You will, because in a startup they'll give you the responsibility for everything, right? They don't,
Hmm.
like, the CEO wouldn't care what you do. They just need the outcome. So you have the leverage to do a lot of things as quickly as possible and
Hmm.
understand how the process works. So yeah, that would be my biggest advice. Just join a group or just follow some YouTube channels and then join a startup.
Any particular, product management influencers or YouTube channels you can think of?
There's one really interesting YouTube channel that I follow, which is Lenny's podcast. I mean,
Lenny's podcast. Okay.
yeah, it's pretty interesting. I would definitely recommend watching it. And also, obviously, this product podcast that I think you are starting. I think going forward, this will be a really great way, for product managers, especially who are in Japan,
Hmm.
to get a lot of insights on how product management in Japan works.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you for that advice. And I want to start a tradition here where,
Mhm.
you leave a question for the next guest. Obviously, you don't know who the next guest is going to be, but
Right.
if you could
Ah,
ask the next guest any other question about product
right.
management, about life, whatever, what would it be?
Right. Oh, oh shit. Okay, that's a pretty interesting thing. Um, One question that I would ask is, apart from work, apart from their family's relationship, and apart from like the entertainment that they have and everything, what is one thing that makes them happy?
Oh, I like it. That's a very good
Yes.
question. Very, very good
Yes.
question. I like it. Very
Yes.
good.
Yes.
All right. Well, Suraj, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on for the first episode of the Product Podcast, and I look forward to future discussions with you and following your journey. If anyone wanted to follow you in your journey, how can they get in touch with you?
They could follow me on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Suraj Bhandari. That's Surajbhandari. If
Awesome.
you search for it, you will find it. Yes.
Awesome.
And yeah, that's it.
Awesome. All right, Suraj, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee. Thank you for having me again.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Product Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Spotify, or leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to share your PM stories, challenges, struggles, or insights with us on a future episode, please get in touch with us on LinkedIn. We'd love to have you on and keep this conversation going. Until next time, happy building, everyone.